All right. Hi, Claire. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you doing?
Oh, pretty good. It's a pleasure to have you on here. Excited to get into the conversation. So, first, just the theme of the podcast and just kind of just set the tone. So, let's just, well, first give the people just like a background of just like who you are and how you would describe yourself.
So my name's Claire. I'm from Arkansas in the United States, and I love travel. I've wanted to travel and started traveling since I was young. Right now, I have a remote job, and I've just slow traveling around the world, spending 2 to 4 months in different places, exploring, meeting new people.
Awesome. And then so I love the fact that, you're not only you're traveling and you have a interesting job that we'll talk about, but then especially your experiences as a queer person, I think just like how me myself, and that's like a large reason why I kind of even started this or got to travel in my first place. I feel like my own identity is a large part of why I travel. So like I would love to or looking forward to diving deep into like yours as a queer person. But just on a basic note, why do you travel?
Why do I travel? I travel to explore new places, to meet new
Hmm.
people. We get so used to our surroundings and what we grew up with, but the world is so much bigger than that. And so every time I go somewhere new, I just learn so much about the world and about people, and it's just so invigorating.
Mm. Okay, and then I see you said you do slow traveling, and so a lot of people, we all travel different ways, or we, traveling. Obviously, we have to like support ourselves. So, how do you make a living while abroad?
Yeah, so I work for a very small company based in South Carolina in the US. So my company, it basically we do soil testing to design septic systems, which is always very interesting to explain when I'm in different countries. But basically, my coworkers dig holes and test the soil and like backyards of new houses, and then all that data gets sent to me on the computer, and so I draw up designs for septic systems for new houses. So it's very,
Okay,
very niche.
yeah, and it's like, and you're so it was like a GIS Geographic Information System Analyst. That's right. Yep.
Yeah, so my background is in that software, and so this
Hmm.
job is just a very specific use of that software.
Oh, perfect. And then so like for people that don't know what it is, so if I understand correctly, that's just like kind of like mapping or just kind of like using data to create fancy charts and such.
That's pretty much exactly how I explain it
Okay.
to people. It's just
Hmm.
using a computer to do mapping. It can be used
Hmm.
in like every field out there.
Yeah, and the reason I like that is because like I think I mean even though it's still in the world of tech, I think so many people are like, how do I get a job abroad? Or like they feel like you could have to do specific thing like they have to may have to change their job. So like did you just kind of like fall into being able to work at a remote company or was it more intentional for you?
It was not intentional. Travel
Okay.
has always been intentional. I love to travel, but basically, I was not happy in my job before this, and so I was applying to every job out there.
Hmm.
Anything that had the word GIS, I applied for. And this job actually, it wasn't branded as a remote job. It was branded
Okay.
like to come to South Carolina. My boss later told me as we got in the interview process that it could be remote, and then once he told me that, I was pretty much sold on the job.
Oh, awesome. And then so have because then I know a lot of people they may have a remote job, but then at the same time they're not necessarily able to leave the country. But it sounds like you're fortunate enough to have like a company that's pretty flexible with you.
I'm extremely lucky. On my first day on the job, when we had lunch, my boss told me, if you want to go travel and work, that's totally fine as long as you get your work done. So he's kept that promise. And I mean, right now I'm in Italy working for a company in South Carolina. So it's
Oh,
pretty cool.
awesome. And then so like where in Italy are you exactly, and just like how are you experiencing Italy?
I am in a teeny tiny town called Tisons.
Hmm.
It's in northeastern Italy. It's actually pretty close to Austria.
Hmm.
And it's the culture here is very much Austrian culture. So people actually speak German, not Italian, which has been an adjustment, but it's beautiful. I'm in a small town in the mountains and I love to hike. So I'm pretty much in paradise right here. I mean, there's just tons of hikes and trails all around here.
Honestly, I've been to many places, but I haven't really done Europe so much, and still haven't done Italy. But you're selling me on it for sure.
Oh, you have to go here. It's amazing. If you like nature, it's beautiful. There's tons of apple orchards and vineyards and beautiful historic castles and towns. It's gorgeous here.
And I imagine, even though it's a small town, the Italian food's just as good as like what you'll be able to find in it, if not better.
Oh, it's
Right?
delicious. I mean, I have pizza 2 or 3 times a week. The
Oh,
pasta
really?
is delicious. The wine, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah. See, that's the main reason I need to get out there.
You need to, seriously.
And then so now, getting into so the like main reason I'm excited to talk to you is because like so just if you may know my background, but like for example, I think my cultural identity was like really important to me. I was raised by immigrants, and then just fell in love with like learning about other people's cultures and such like that. But then also at one point in time, I really because I was raised Jewish, and then I wanted to go to Israel. Like so, naturally, then the way we experience the world obviously then shapes like how we experience it, our interests to go, the communities we connect with while we're there, so on and so forth. So again, it's just like to me, it's like the perfect catalyst to talk about like how traveling is like actually pretty deep, actually, like kind of like the more you unpack it. So just to kind of like go there with you, I was just curious, like, what's it like traveling as a queer person for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of times it doesn't. I don't notice it, but it's times when I'm in situations where it's like, oh, I'm definitely the only queer person here, or it feels
Right.
I'm the only queer person here. Whereas at home, I have my community of people, and then I guess I notice it a lot more. And also, it's just sometimes you're going to new places, and I have to be kind of careful to figure out like if it's a safe place to really fully be myself. And 99% of the time it is, but in small towns and other countries, sometimes I hold back a little bit.
Mhm.
Overall, yeah, it's just I wouldn't say it's too different overall.
Okay. And then like so that I know one of the things like that you mentioned before was that and you kind of said it now is the fact that like certain places you may feel like you have to hide parts of yourself, and then other places you've maybe been more open experience. So I guess do you mind talking about like certain experiences or certain places that were on both ends of that spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some places that surprised me. Last year I went to Colombia, and then earlier this year I was in Mexico, and
Mhm.
just from my expectations, I wasn't expecting them to be as open and welcoming as they were. I was in cities in both of them, so that surely affected it, but they were just very welcoming. I had a girlfriend in Colombia, and we held hands in public. We kissed in public. It's a very touchy culture.
Yeah.
Um, and no one looked any other way. It was just completely acceptable. Like people would say we looked cute walking down the street.
Oh.
Similarly, in Mexico, I mean, where I was living was just like a queer mecca. I honestly had never
Mm.
lived in a city that I just felt so surrounded by queer people. So those were honestly just amazing experiences overall. Just felt very, very safe. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, honestly, thinking about it, like the United States, growing up in the South, not the best place to be queer, not the most accepting. It's just, and especially right now, there's just a ton of anti-gay, anti-trans rhetoric in the U.S.
Mm.
So honestly, that's the place where I feel like the least accepted by the general public, especially in like smaller towns in the South.
Yeah, it's very ironic. I mean, like, so would you say that you feel like a weight lifted off of your shoulders sometimes when you go abroad because of that?
It does, yeah. I mean, it feels freeing, and also it's just I'm going to new places, and I can just really fully be myself
Mhm.
wherever I'm going, which feels nice.
Yeah, and then I imagine then that's like less motivation to come back home. You're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay out here.
Oh, it is. I love being abroad. I love going new places. Definitely.
And another reason I like these conversations because like again, it's like we all have different yet similar experiences. Because I think like as a black person, like in at least in our community, you hear that a lot. It's just like you said, there's like historical and modern day oppression against like the LGBTQ community, likewise with the United States. And it's like, for me, it wasn't what I was thinking about when I first went, but I remember I think my first business trip, I went to Dubai, and just the way people were interacting with me, I felt more American than like black all of a sudden. And it was
That's
like, wow.
awesome.
And then that's what I imagine, just like, yeah, like, of course I'm not in your exact experience, but it was like a weight lifted off. And then you reminded me, so I worked for a travel company, and it was an older woman, let's say 60s, just got a peg around there, and from the South as well, just like you said. And
Yep.
um so like, fortunately, like, yeah, obviously there's still modern day things that us in our generation have to deal with, but it really put it in context. It was like the first day the program started. We have this thing called like big talk. I was like, yeah, let's just like cut to it, like. And she just was talking to somebody, and I was a facilitator, so I'm going around, and it was like tears. I was like, oh my god, what's going on? And she ended up sharing
Wow.
with the entire group that, like, yeah, being raised in the South with a religious, so it's like, and again, it's like I can't put myself in their shoes exactly. But then when she was saying, like, it's not just I couldn't show who I loved, but it was like I was interested in sports. I wanted to dress a certain way. I wanted to do
Yes.
this and that. And then, like, now that I'm abroad, like, here, like in a different community, I feel, and then, so imagine her feeling like that at like 60 years old. And then,
Wow.
so again, that put into perspective with me, like, things in a queer community, so it's like different experiences. But yeah, I imagine that's a large weight.
That really resonates with me because I just recently, like a year ago, I cut off all my hair. I had pretty long hair my whole
Mm,
life. And so, introducing myself to people I knew, family and friends, it was just, oh, wow. Oh, you look so different. Whereas now that I'm abroad, it's just like people see me and this is
yeah,
who
that's
they
who you
know
are.
from the beginning. So it's very freeing in that respect.
Mm. And then, so in Mexico, you said, like, it was like surprising. So that was Guadalajara.
Yes, I was in Guadalajara.
Okay. And then so for, because again, like, especially, people all around the world are listening to this, but especially Americans, I think, like, whenever we see Mexico, it's like some like pueblo with like drug cartels. Like, at least that's how they show it
Yes,
in the
it is.
media. But like, paint a picture for those that like may not know much about Mexico.
Oh, Mexico's amazing. Let me
Hmm.
just say that from the beginning. So Guadalajara is one of the biggest cities in Mexico. So it's like living in a big city. The area I was in is a very trendy area. There were within maybe a 10-minute walking radius, I'd say at least 30 different cafes, like
Mm.
just all these trendy, cute cafes filled with plants, lots of tree lined boulevards. And then you can get the best food there. There's street food all over. People are extraordinarily friendly. I mean, just anyone I talked to was friendly. I speak Spanish, but even so, I
Nice.
saw people who didn't speak Spanish, and people are just still so friendly to them and helpful. And it was also just extremely easy to make friends there. And I got to know a lot of the people at the cafes I would go to, and other people who would go to those cafes as well. So it's just a really great place to live.
And I know, like, Guadalajara stood out especially, but then, like, would you say like Mexico overall, when you were navigating it, you felt safe and open?
I did, although I'd say in like smaller towns, rural areas, that
Mm,
maybe more similar to smaller towns in the U.S., where it
got it.
just like you could still be yourself. It's just not as like extremely open
Yeah.
as the cities. Yeah, I have made a good friend there who's also queer, and she is from a small town, but then moved to Guadalajara, and she's told me that it's a lot more freeing to be in the city versus her tiny town that she grew up in.
Okay, so not only so curious, how many countries have you been to so far?
Oh man, I think 14 or 15 at this
Okay,
point.
solid. And then, like, of course, within the countries, that you have like cities within the countries, with then it's also could be worlds apart. So, someone with your
Yes.
background and experience, having been to so many places, like, what advice would you give to people overall, but especially like queer people, as they're navigating, traveling?
I guess the big thing I would say is I feel like queer people, because we have been ostracized, we find communities wherever we live. And so once you have your community at home, it can be scary to leave it because you know you're safe, you know the people. And so I think I would just tell people that there are good people everywhere, and it can be freeing to travel, and just it can be scary, but just try to be brave and get out there and travel because it is so rewarding, and you'll find great people everywhere.
100%. And then like, it's like I'm always just like, yeah, just go do it. It'll be okay.
Yes.
Of course, you can't guarantee everything will be okay, but that's part of the experience. And then so like and then even just more like on a specific level, because some people are like, all right, so mustered up the strength to go. All right, cool. I'm going to find community. And I think that's something all the places you've been, it sounds like you've either found like romantic relationships or you found a community. How do you go about it? Is it like some people use apps, some people use maybe their hobbies or interests? For you, how did you go about it?
I mostly use apps. I
Yeah.
can be a shy person at first,
Yeah.
and so it's hard for me to just go to group and make new friends that way. So I've used actually like dating apps,
Yeah.
Tinder and Bumble. Also, Bumble BFF is a great app for just making platonic friendships.
Mhm.
I actually met my best friend in Mexico, Pat. I met her on Bumble, like on the dating side. We met up for a date, and we didn't say anything, but it just like quickly became a friendship, but a very strong friendship. And I made other friends through those apps in Mexico and Colombia as well. I've also made friends in the U.S. that way. So for me, it's been very successful.
I'm actually really glad you said that because I feel like dating apps get a bad rap. I admittedly wasn't. I feel like I'm dating myself now. It was probably like 8 years or so ago. I'm in Australia and I was like, I'm not going to use it. Then I downloaded it. But then, you're abroad. Like, and then it kind of like forced me. And like you said, I'm an introvert as well. Like, all right. But then once I felt like I was forced to use it, and then I think it was also about how I used it, right? I think the more authentic I was
Yes.
with myself and what I'm looking for or my interests are, then like that kind of cosmic energy. That's kind of like what I got back. And then
Oh
since
yeah.
then, like you said, like so many connections around the world, and like which then brings you into the community. So yeah, I'm really glad we get to hear more like the positive side of those
Yeah,
apps.
they can be good. Not always, of course, but there are pluses. And I feel like what you said about being your authentic self, like that's a big one. Just like really putting yourself out there and like being who you are, because then you're gonna attract those people who like your kind of personality and like you.
And to that point, you said like for example, you're bride, you cut your hair, you're feeling more open and such. Like, I'm sure you're always yourself, but do you feel like it took that authenticity to another level?
I do, and I feel like I've also just learned a lot more about myself because
Mhm.
I'm not nervous about, oh, what are people from home? What do they think? Like
Right.
how will I be perceived? It's more just I can fully just put myself out there, and I feel like each time I go to a different place, I kind of experiment with like a new version of me, and I feel like all of that together, I'm just like finding out who I am and who I want to be as well.
Then when you think about it holistically, I'm sure then that ties then into just like mental, emotional health and just like wellness, like overall.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't fully nomadic up until
Mhm.
maybe a month ago. I rented a room in South Carolina, and then last month moved all that stuff out. But it was when I was in Mexico, I just realized I was so happy, just mentally, physically, emotionally, just probably the peak.
Mhm.
Just I had a great routine. I had great friends. I was hiking almost every day, and then I just decided like that's what I want to be doing. Maybe not forever, but for right now, it's been pretty great.
Yeah. See, I think that's it right there. That I feel like that's like essentially the point or I guess the mission or like that I've been drumming with this, and then so I'm glad you got to share your story and you got to highlight that, right, like how on that deeper side of it, it does so much for us, like overall, like when you I don't want to say do it the right way, but there's traveling just to kind of like see a place then leave, but then there's also like really experiencing yourself, the people, and more while being abroad as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love just kind of getting to know a place, getting to know people. That's what travel really is to me.
Okay. And then so on the final question is just like what we like to ask is what has been your most rewarding travel experience?
My most rewarding travel experience, I would have to say, this is a kind of long travel experience, but when I was
Mm,
living in Mexico, I developed a routine of hiking outside of the city in a place called La Barranca, which
mm,
is this giant canyon. And so I started doing it just like once on a weekend. And then by the end, I was doing it 3 or 4 times in the morning before work. Um, and I think it was just really special because I got to know the people and I got to
mm.
know the place. I got to know the dogs and cats there. So it was like a 5 mile round trip hike going straight down and then straight back up on this pretty intense hike. And there were a lot of people who did this hike every day. And I mean, it is a hard hike and just
Wow.
getting to know the people there. And I mean, there were men in their 70s running up this
Wow.
thing. Everyone did this, even though it's like pretty intense. And there were a couple of women that just by the end they were friends, and I just think developing those relationships and then the relationship with that place was extremely meaningful to me.
Well, you certainly added a bucket list item for me. I hadn't
Yes,
heard about it, but now it's a must do.
you have to go there.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much, Claire. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And then, yeah, I'm sure we'll connect again soon. And then for those that may want to reach out to you, learn more about your experience, want to get advice or follow up on anything that you said, is there any way they can reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way would be Instagram. I'm quite active on Instagram. I'm Claire underscore smiley face, and that's written out smiley face. So I'd love to get in touch with anyone who'd like to chat.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, that's all for today. Thank you very much again. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.